Okay, so we got our Unit 3 folder project created. Then let's create a class. And we can call our class. What should we call it? Anybody want to give us a name? The class? I guess we call it just student is fine. Student with a capital S. Okay. You get this is going to be our yeah. So we'll add the public static main. We'll make this a main class, the main program, and just click finish. Okay, so we have a class here. I can take this off for now. Okay, so again, look at this here. If you see that you have a public class called student. Okay, again, this public is not required. I can take it out, and it should still be fine. Okay, if you take it out, then it's using the default modifier, which is still going to be public. Okay, so public. This is the method we just auto created from the IDE. It's the public main method. This is the main entry to your program. So all your classes are bundled inside a package. On the left side, you see a package called default. If you are using NetBeans, you probably have it probably asks you to already create a package called something. But it's the same idea. If it's a package, then you'll say the package name could be like my project or something. Okay, but anyway, so you have a student, class student. You have a method here, and this is functional. It's fully functional. It runs and no problem, right? This method takes one parameter or args. Again, this is optional. This args could be just X. It doesn't really matter what you call it. Okay, the books call it. Most books and most other languages as well use args. It stands for arguments. Okay, but notice if I take it out. Right? It's just like it seems to be still be okay. Okay, but you leave that in there, and then I will do some of the custom methods later on. So any variables declared inside a method here, for example, if I put int, maybe like score or something, this is a local variable. Just gonna repeat what I said last time. Local variable. Okay. Why is it local variable? So when I say local variable, what does it mean?
Yes. Inside the second set of curly brackets?
Inside
Inside the main method.
the main method?
Right. If we're outside the main method, it'd be global.
Okay. Well, what if I do this?
Doesn't mean it can only be called in that main method?
Sorry?
Doesn't mean it can only be called in that main method?
Yeah, I think you got that right. Yes. It's local to that function only. Okay? So as you can see, I have two local variables, and they're inside two separate methods. Right? So local variables only exist within that local scope, which is contained within that, right? So you did mention earlier about the curly braces too. So between this curly braces and this one here, it only exists within that scope. Okay? But mainly it's within a function or a method. It's called a local variable. So that's what it means. That's good. Inside a function, I cannot use these modifiers like public. Okay? I can't use it. It won't let me use it because it's a local variable. It's not part of the class. Okay, so you cannot put a here. Either only the keyword final for, what's final again? Constant, right? A constant, or without that, just a data type. Okay? Now in the class space, out here outside of the functions and the methods, then you can have other variables call, maybe here we'll use a string name. Okay. So this is outside of the class, methods, but it's still inside the class space. So if I were to, close these two, see, it's the same level as your methods. Okay, any data, any variables you declare in here are called, these are your, what are these called again? These are called, in terms of object-oriented programming, these are your instance, okay, variables. When we say instance variables, this is what they reside. Not inside the method, outside the method always, okay? Instance, because when you create a copy of this or object of the student, it has, so this will be an attribute of the student. The student has a name, right? Now notice I don't have the modifier out here. I could say public. And now because it has the same level as your method, it allows me to use these modifiers. Okay, so I can set the name to be public, it could be a private, it could be a protected type, or it could be none. If it's none, then it will be defaulted to public. Okay, so this is modified. Private means, public means that if I have another class, let's say I have a class called faculty outside of this file. So that means that faculty can go and access this name directly, okay, from there. If I set this to private, that means that this variable name can only be accessed within this class. I cannot access from outside of other class if I set to private. It's private only to the student, okay? That's if I set it to private. If it's private, they're only available to the student, and therefore I can call it from anywhere within student class only. I cannot call it from outside. And again, I'll demonstrate this later what it means. Another type is the protected type modifier. Protected means that because in terms of inheritance, okay, I can have another class, so you have a parent class and a child class. Protected means that only the child class can access it, okay? Child class can access it, but if it's another class that is not part of the student class, if you don't belong to the same class, if you're not a subclass of the student class, then you cannot access it, okay? So that's what it's protected. Okay, so you mainly have four of them. You have the public, private, protected, and the default, which is the one without any modifier. Okay, so by convention, and generally, usually always, and it's also a safety feature, your instance variables should always be set to private. Okay, so that cannot be modified from outside. And there's a really good reason why. Actually, there are two reasons why. And I'll go over this again later, because right now if I do it, it's probably hard to understand until we actually see the different classes, how they work together, and how you can access these data from outside. Okay, but there are really two good reasons why you want to set this private. Okay, so we have an instance variable called name, and you can assign a default value if you want. So let's just say if you have name, and all students, if you create an object out of student class, all the students should have a default name of John, or whatever it is. But you can't do that because it could be a female, right? So maybe a name that can take both. But anyway, so usually leave it a blank. And then you can have another property, private type of, maybe we have int of ID. Okay, so we have an ID number. Assume this is only all integer type. There's no decimal numbers in there, no characters in there, just all numbers. And let's do one more. Private and age. So we have 3 private instance variables. And these are non-static because you don't have the static in front of it, right? And I'll tell you what that means, it's static or non-static. And let's have one more, and we'll call this, I will make this one static. Static of type int, and then we'll put maybe grade, meaning like 9th grade, 10th grade, or 11th grade, or so on. So this is a static variable. Okay, now inside the public void method here, the main method, if you want to access these data here, so notice in the int score, it's a local variable. So if you want to assign a value to the score, I could just say score is equal to 90, right? I can access directly from here within this static scope main method. What about name? What if you want to use name and then give it a name of somebody's name? Okay. So if I want to do this, if I just say name is equal to Mary, you have a red squiggly line telling you something, right? But you're thinking like, wait a minute, I thought all these variables are global. Shouldn't they be available anywhere, right? And if you mouse over this, it tells you that cannot make a static reference to a non-static field name. Okay, so here this is a static method. This function is static, and this is not static. So by one of those rules, if you saw the list earlier, this list over here, where is it at? Right here, okay? You can refer back to this list here. So only static can access static data directly, okay? If it's a static method here, and I want to access something that's not static, like int here, or string, or age, you can't. Because these are called instance variables. These are non-static. That means that to get those data, you have to create an object out of those. How do you do that? Well, I have to create an object of type student in order to use these. Okay? So I cannot do it this way. So that means to use the name, I cannot, because it's not static. Static means it's available to everyone, everywhere. Okay? And if I change some data, if I change its data, then it changes everywhere else applied throughout the entire program. Where if it's an instant, then it's contained within the object itself. So that means, for example, if I want to use this name, I have to create a student object called maybe S1. Okay? So this object called S1, and then to create the new object, I'll call new student, and then I'll end it there. This is the constructor. As you can see, there's no constructor here. Again, because we don't have one, so therefore Java provides one for us by default. Okay, so now I have an object of S1. Then to use the name, now this name here, because it's an instance variable, instance means it belongs to an object. Okay, it has to have an object. You don't have an object, you cannot access it. You cannot use it. So if you give it to S1 as the object, then now I will have to say, I have to go and say S1.name is Mary. Okay, the dot notation is a way of accessing these data members or data fields for each object. Okay, so S1 is a new object called of type student, which is in the same class. And then now S1 it's a new student, has no name yet. Now I give it a name, and her name is going to be Mary. It does have ID, age, and grade, but these are not assigned yet, so therefore they are not there's no value. So if you want to change the if you want to add the ID to it, S1, I do the same thing. S1 dot ID, and then give an ID 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. The age will be the same thing, right? So let's give it an age for her. S1 dot age is, oh, we heard 25 years old. And we'll give her a grade. It's 25 grade, so probably in college, I would say grade, I don't know, 18 or something. So you can see that I have created an object of S1, student 1. As soon as this created, all these variable names are available to the student, but they're not assigned until I manually assign their values this way. Okay, just to show you what that is, how that is. So let's just say right before I do the initialization down there, if I go ahead and print here, if I say system out, print the S1's ID. If you print that out right now, what do you think is going to show?
Nothing.
Is it nothing or is it something? 0, right? Did you run it first? Yeah, cheater. No, that's fine. Yeah. So you get a 0, right? So by default, numeric variable names, if you don't assign any values, it's always 0. But string is not. Okay, so string is a little bit different. If you don't assign any values at all, if you're trying to print it, it will probably throw an error saying it's not defined assigned a value. It cannot be empty either. So, but right. So if you run this now, you say that you will see that it's 0 because we didn't assign any values. Okay. So yeah. So you should see 0. As the output. So you see 0 here. Okay? And if I copy this, if I put it down below this, if I print it out now, it should probably say 0, and then the next value is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's because now we assign the values to Mary's, to S1. Okay, so these are our non-static variables, instance variables. Therefore, you cannot just directly call it, use it. You have to create an object to use it. Okay? Yes?
So for grade, you just be able to call it, right? You don't need S1.
Yes,
Yeah.
great question, right. So for the grade, because it's static, and static is static, I can just call that right away. So I could say score here could be, maybe not score, but I could have like, let me just do this, add some line down here. So I could say, int g is equal to grade, and no problem because grade is static. Okay, so I can call that's fine, and S1 is an object, and I can access that's fine too. Okay, so if you're accessing this data, if it's static, then anybody can reach it. If it's an object, can call it directly. A static variable can call it directly. Okay, it's just not the other way around. So a static cannot call a non-static object variables or methods. Okay, so as soon as I turn this off, you see that the error comes right back. I cannot access grade anymore because it's no longer it's no longer static. Okay. But what does it mean static? To show that, let's go another one. I'm going to turn this off here. Let's create another student. We call this one here S2. Okay, so to do the same thing here, you can just copy and paste for S2, or just type it. So student S2, and it's going to be new student as well. So S2 also has all of these properties here, the same properties as S1. But now S2, because it's a separate entity, separate object, even though they're the same type, same class, S2's data are now uninitialized, right? It should still be blank and so on until I set S2's data like I did it with S1. Okay, so if I change this to S2, you see the S2's data will still be 0 because S2's data hasn't been set yet. And if I change this to S2 down here at the bottom, it should still say 0 because I didn't set S2's data yet. If I run this, okay, so both 0. So S1, S2 are the same type, same class, student, but they have their own values. The states are different, okay? They share the same properties, the same name, variable, same ID, age, and so on, but their values are different. So therefore, this is called information hiding. This is the black box that you cannot know what's inside the other objects. You cannot change their data, change the value, and so on. Okay, but static, because static is a static variable. Now notice if I change this to S2 static, I mean the grade, and then down here as well. Well, yeah. Let me comment the second one first. When I run the grade, I should expect to see 0, right? So let's run this. So this is 0. This is not set. Now down here, if I run and then S1s, use S1s, I set S1s to 18. So if I run S1s, and I'll put a message in here, just say here, S1s, okay, S1's data, maybe you put like S1 grade or something. S1's grade, if I run this now, is 18, which is correct. Okay, so I'm going to copy this line here and paste it right below it. I'm going to change to S2. S2's grade. What do you think it's going to be? They're both 18. Oh, wait a minute, I didn't set S2's data. Why is that? I didn't set S2's here. Why is it 18 as well? Yeah, it's static, right? Static data, everybody can access it. Okay? If I change it because we're the same class, S1 and S2 are the same class, anywhere in my code, if any of this data here are static, if Mary changes it, it affects S2s, S3s, S4, S5. And if later on, if S5 changes to something else, it's going to affect Mary's as well because we're looking at the same data. We share that same data. That's what static means. Okay? So now this is no longer in the black box. It's open and to the public, right? So this is an example of, like I mentioned earlier one time about how you play video games. Everybody's killing the boss. Okay, I have like 2 players. I have my own score, my own name, and so on. But we can all kill the master, and they all take effect, and I can see it, and so that's you, because they share the same static, okay, data. So if you kill the monster and the life drops by 10, then I'll see it, and also does the other objects as well, okay, because that is public to everybody. But everything else, if it's not static, then it's contained within that object only, and it's private to those objects. Okay, so you cannot change this ID in there. That's why you see that if I put the ID here as S2's ID is 0, I change S1's ID to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If I print S2's ID, it would still be 0. Okay, because I cannot alter its data. But the static grade I can. Right? Any questions on this? About the static and non-static? The same applies to methods as well. So, so let's do the methods here, for example. I'll do a test here, not test, but let's change this to, what do we do here? We'll create a method, a function. Instead of void, it's going to return something. So it will return a data type of, what is called a GPA, I guess. Not GPA, what do we call it? We'll turn string, okay? String. And this one will say of type maybe get grade or something. Okay, get grade. And we'll put a variable here, the grade number. So we'll pass the grade, okay, to this function. So it'll be of type integer, and we'll just call this also grade. Okay, well, let me delete this. And you see these red squiggly lines, and what does it tell you? So it must return a result of type string. Because I said it's going to type string, so you have to return that same type back. If you change to void, then it's happy. Okay? It doesn't require that. So a string, so somewhere down here, I have to have a return statement, and it has to be a string back. So for now, just put that for now, so it's happy. Okay, so when I have this method here, let's just say, I'll leave that for now. And if you want to call this method from the main method, okay, you have to call a method from another method. You can't just call it from outside here. Okay? Or you can, but I mean not directly from here. So let's just say I want to call this method for student S1 because it's returning a string back, right? Return a string back. So I want to create a variable, maybe like of type string, and I'll call it maybe grade, grade level. Okay. And this grade level is going to return the grade level of S1. So it's going to be assigned to a function called getGrade. Get the grade level for S1's grade, this value. Did I do something wrong here? Okay, yeah. So grade level, it's a string, matches the string type, and I'm passing the S1's grade, which is 18, to this grade. I could use that, or I could just put a number here, it's fine, like 18 is fine. Okay, it doesn't matter. But for now, just use the S1's grade 18, pass it to this function, and it's gonna retrieve as a 18, and then you do some calculations in here. But I have an error here. It says cannot make static reference to a non-static method, which is kind of similar to what we saw earlier, right? I cannot access a non-static instance from a static method. If I take that out, it's happy because now it's non-static. Okay, So if it's this static, then the whole function here is static. So therefore, if we want to call other methods, then this method either has to be a static type. Now it's happy. Or again, you have to create an object. So as soon as I create this instance method, this is an instance method. When you hit the word instance, is usually referred to a non-static method, a non-static variable. Okay, so this is instance method. And instance means also it's a part of the object. So therefore, this method called getGrade belongs to S1 and it does belong to S2 also. It's part of the actions. Okay, remember methods are actions, whereas variables are attributes. Okay, so I have one action called getGrade. So how do I get this? Well, I need to call S1's getGrade. It belongs to S1. I could also call it S2. It doesn't matter because now S2 also has have access to that function as well, right? And this function, all it does is just do some type of calculation. So it doesn't matter who I use. It will still be fine. As long as I have an object, then I can access it. Otherwise, I can't. So let me put this as S1. So now I can do this. I did in here. So 18 pass through the function here and do some calculation. Kind of like one example, I can say if grade is greater than we could say if it's equals 9, then you would say return freshman, right? Else if grade is equal to 10, then sophomore, and so on, right? Return, maybe you can say high school sophomore, and so on. And then I'm gonna do this last one here. Else if grade is greater than 12, then we'll say return college. That's it for now. So just wait those three. You can do more if you want. Oh, I had some error here. Okay, return types. This string must return a zero type string. Okay, so you can see I have the type already, and then we do the else part. If none of those is true, then we'll return. Just put none here for now. Okay, so it has to have a catch-all. So one of those has to be called. The reason why if I don't have the else part, and then it has a squiggly line because it already knows that situation. What if none of this is true? It can't return anything back, and therefore it will violate the rule of returning a string back. That's what you have to say. The catch-all is if none of those true, then return this. Okay. So now that's the case. Then I can now print this out. System print. I can say S1's grade level, and I'll put here plus the grade level. Okay, so S1's grade level will be whatever that is. So if you run it now, it should say college, because none of this is true. It's 18 is greater than 12 and so on, so it's college. Okay, I'm sorry I forgot to watch the time. We're out of. I want to take a 10-minute break, so we'll give you guys a break as well. So I want to take a break and we'll come back and we'll finish this off.